Hello, everybody. It is Monday, June 17th, 2024. Welcome to episode 93 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been thinking a lot about Mirage block lately, and we've been talking about Mirage block a lot lately. Today, we're going to continue that trend by going back to 1997 to discuss a couple decks from PT Paris, which was a Mirage Visions only PT. And then we're going to finish up in the Old Mage Commander Corner, where Alex and I will come one step closer to finishing our 2024 Old Frame Commander decks. I'm actually going to finish mine today, by the way. Spoiler alert.
All right.
Alex, you're giggling a little bit, Alex. Are you just excited about today?
It's hard to concentrate.
Are you so excited about today? Oh, the Minotaur. You're distracted by the Minotaur.
Yeah. It's a little warm in here.
That's also a spoiler alert. There are going to be some Minotaurs in some of those PT Paris 1997 decks. But before we get into our deck discussions, I'm going to shill for a little bit. If you enjoy the podcast, you can support us numerous ways. You can support us by giving us a like on this video that you're watching right now, or on this podcast that you're listening to right now. You can subscribe to us if you haven't already. You can do all of these things on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We're up to 341 subscribers on YouTube, Alex. Woo fucking who? That's 327 more subs than I ever thought we would have. There's also a new thing that people can subscribe to us on. Alex, I made our Moxfield public. So if you're interested in seeing any of the decks that we've discussed on the Old Mage MTG podcast, subscribe to our Moxfield. It's currently Old Men Magic on Moxfield, or Old Name. Some point, maybe I'll figure out how to switch that. But right now, we're Old Men Magic on Moxfield. And we'll have the link to the Moxfield in the description below. Another thing that we have in the link, that we have a link to in the description below, is our TCG affiliate link. So if you're in the market for any cardboard or cardboard accessories, you can see that in the episode description. You click on that little link, you buy your cardboard and cardboard accessories, we get a tiny little percentage. It helps us out, and it costs you nothing. All of these things cost you nothing. Those are the best ways to help people, are the ways where you don't have to really spend any money. You don't really have to do much. You just click a little button. Super easy.
Creating something out of nothing.
Before we get into the main topics today, we do have one thing I want to address from the last episode. It is a follow-up to the last episode. When we were discussing the Fruity Pebbles combo, Alex, which involves Enduring Renewal, Goblin Bombardment, and a 0 casting cost artifact creature, we started wondering if there were any 0 casting cost non-artifact creatures in the old frame card pool. We couldn't think of any. But we forgot about some classics. Somebody mentioned this to us in the comments of the last episode. We forgot about some classics from my favorite set of all-time legends, the Kobolds. There were several Kobolds in Legends. Crimson Kobolds, which is 01. Crookshank Kobolds, which are 01. And then my favorite, Kobolds of Carekeep, which are 01. They are all 0 casting cost. They are all summon kobolds, and they all say this card is a red spell when cast, and kobolds are red creatures. They're all 0/1. Did I say that?
Yeah, I think so. I think you covered that.
Okay. But anyways,
I was waiting for you to say why Crookshank were your favorite, because I thought there was going to be something special about them. It's just because the name.
Not Crookshank.
Or Kobolds of Carekeep.
Kobolds of Care. I just like the art on this one the best.
I like the name of it.
It reminds me of an old, like, not any particular cartoon, but some weird animated children's cartoon that was developed by somebody who took a whole bunch of psychedelics in the 60s.
Yeah, it kind of looks like the old Hobbit cartoon a little.
Who were the people that made a lot of children's programming for people like our parents' age? Sid and Marty Krofft or something? Does it have like a Sid and Marty Krofft kind of vibe? I can't remember exactly what they did, but
I'm not sure.
I really like the art.
We didn't spend too long thinking about it, but yeah, we didn't think of the kobolds, which were definitely around when we were younger and we were familiar with them. I think it was interesting that they had the presence of mind to establish in the text of the card that it was red, just to like, eliminate any rules questions. They could have maybe just relied on the border color to do that, and I think they took the safe way to make sure there wouldn't be issues.
They were thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Crookshank, illustrated by Christopher Rush.
Hmm.
My
That one looks
favorite,
kind of like the Dark Crystal Muppets.
my favorite, Kobolds of Carekeep, illustrated by Julie Barrow. And then the other one, illustrated by another classic Magic the Gathering artist, Anson Maddox, Crimson Kobolds.
And that one looks kind of like a wombat to me. Reminds me of like little rabid wombat from
The
Legends.
kobolds all look very different. What is a kobold, Alex? Is this something that was from the Dungeons and Dragons
It
lore?
was, although I think like a lot of things, it was probably borrowed from, yeah, like a,
Something else.
Slavic or Eastern European myth or something. But
Oh,
they're
you're
like
close.
little what?
You're pretty close there. In German folklore, a kobold is a mischievous household spirit who usually helps with chores and gives other valuable services, but who
Oh, yeah.
often hides household and farm tools or kicks over stooping persons. That's fucked.
The kobold did it when you fall over.
Sometimes we'll do chores for you. Sometimes we're going to kick you in the ass when you're gardening. You never know.
There's actually, this is off topic, but there's a pretty cool game I played. It's a PC game on Steam. I think it's called Black Book, but it's like a Russian story-based game that uses a lot of like of the mythology from that part of the world. Maybe it's not technically Russian, but this part of the world. And it was a pretty interesting game because it taught you a lot of vocabulary words and mythological names of things from the culture. And there were a lot of things like that in it. You had to like talk to these like demons that were like household hearth demons, and they were mad because the person who lived in the house like did something that insulted them or didn't leave them an offering over in the nook like they were supposed to. It was very interesting.
Don't forget to leave offerings, people. That's the take-home message from this follow-up. Leave your offerings.
It was called Black Book, by the way.
Okay. Is it still available on Steam?
Yeah, it's still on Steam.
How much?
It won't show me because I own it already.
Okay.
I think. Is a dark RPG adventure based on Slavic myths in which you play as a young sorceress. And there's like a card battle element in the game. I forgot about that. There's like when you fight the demons and stuff, you have a deck assembly deal like Magic. You make yourself a little deck out of cards you've discovered.
Oh, okay.
Card Magic battles against the demons you fight.
Potential crossover. Make that happen, wizards. Okay, Alex, you're very red right now. You look like you're in the pits of hell.
I don't know what happened. I changed my How's that?
That's less red.
Less red.
I just know what's going on. Do you have special lights behind you or something? Not in front of you, I guess.
No, just not. No, I need a better lamp that's less yellow and makes it look red. And I changed my screen on my computer, which was reflecting.
Oh, okay. Okay, anyways, that was our follow-up. Crimson Cobalt. So if you're playing a Fruity Pebbles deck that doesn't limit you to cards printed after Legends, you could use Kobolds instead of Shield Sphere. Now, Shield Sphere is much better.
Yeah. Maybe if you're doing like a commander version of that kind of deck or something somehow, and you need more copies of zero casting cost creatures.
Yeah, you get one Shield Sphere, one Ornithopter, one Phyrexian Walker, one Crimson Kobold, one Crookshank Kobold, one Kobolds of Carekeep.
Yeah, there you go. 6 zero casting cost creatures at least for your commander deck.
Okay. We're done with the follow-up. We're moving on to segment 1, Alex. Segment 1 I've titled The Hasty Boys of Mirage and Visions because we're going to talk about some hasty boys in this segment. Friday night after work, I was at home. I was browsing through issue 15 of The Duelist, published February 1997, as one does, on a Friday night after work. And I ended up reading an article titled Visions of Glory, The Making of Mirage Jr. It was all about the making of Visions. and I read something that stopped me in my tracks, Alex. I was gobsmacked, if I'm using that word correctly.
I think so.
It was a quote from Bill Rose. He worked on the design team for Visions. And this quote said, "We've also added a couple of powerful minotaurs, so players will finally be able to use their didgeridoos." And I'm sitting there, I start scratching my head. I say to myself, is there something that I'm forgetting from Mirage or from Visions? What were these powerful minotaurs that inspired people to dig their didgeridoos out of their boxes so they could pay just 3 mana to take minotaurs from their hand and put them directly into play as though they were just summoned? I did some digging, and these are the minotaurs that were printed in Visions, Alex. I'm presenting them to you right now.
Okay.
Tal Room Champion,
Okay.
4 colorless, 1 red, 3/3 summon minotaur, first strike. Whenever Tal Room Champion blocks or is blocked by any creature, that creature loses first strike until end of turn.
So it kind of has like double strike, kind of like double first strike.
I guess, yeah. I've never actually read exactly what double strike does, but that sounds...
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure either, but I think it's, yeah, like first strike that beats other first strike.
regular first strike. We haven't, folks, listeners, we haven't made it to a set yet that has double strike in it. We're gonna get there in the future.
That's my understanding.
It sounds, what I do know is it's better than first strike.
But yeah, this guy has first strike and also just the ability to nullify other people's first strike,
which is not coming handy very often.
No.
And it's 3/3
No.
for 5 mana. But you could pay 1 mana to cast your Didgeridoo and then feed 3 more mana in it and tap it to bring Tal Room Champion into play. You wanted to do that.
Does it just come your hand into play with Didgeridoo?
Yes.
You don't get to tutor forward or anything. It's just
correct. You take
All
minotaurs from your hand and you put them directly into play as though they were just summoned. You can double check that on your end if you want, but I believe I'm right. The second minotaur printed in Visions was Tal Room Piper. Also 4 colorless, 1 red, also 3/3 summon minotaur. All creatures with flying able to block Tal Room Piper do so. So you could pay 1 mana to cast your Didgeridoo and then feed 3 mana into that Didgeridoo and tap it to bring Tal Room Piper into play. So then you could attack with Tal Room Piper and have whatever flying creatures your opponent controls kill the Tal Room Piper, which is what's going to happen most of the time. You could do that. And I thought to myself, no, Bill, nobody was using Didgeridoos to summon these guys. That's a crazy quote. I then tried to remember if there were perhaps some powerful minotaurs in Mirage. You know, same block, given Bill benefit of the doubt. Maybe there were some powerful minotaurs in Mirage that I just don't remember because I didn't have a Didgeridoo and, you know, we just weren't playing minotaur decks, but maybe it was happening somewhere. And I did find one. But again, nobody was buying Didgeridoos to get this guy on the battlefield. He only costs 4 damn mana and he has haste. So you're not going to pay 1 mana to play your Didgeridoo and then feed 3 mana into that Didgeridoo to activate it and bring the Tower Minotaur into play because that costs you 4 mana anyways. You could just pay 2 colorless and 2 red to summon the 3/3 Tower Minotaur onto the battlefield, and he's unaffected by summoning sickness. So you attack with him right away.
Yeah. I mean, the Didgeridoo could still help you a little bit with it, but not much.
Not much. Not much at all, Alex.
Yeah.
And it just got me thinking about Minotaurs from Visions and Mirage and whether or not anybody was actually playing these things back then. I don't think, you know, there was never any sort of Didgeridoo Visions Minotaur deck, but I did find that at least one of these Minotaurs did get some play. The Tout Room Minotaur, which actually isn't that bad, showed up in 2 of the top 8 decks in PT 1997 Paris. It was held in April of 1997. It was block constructed. It consisted of only Mirage and Visions. I was looking at these 2 decks, and I thought they'd make an interesting topic for discussion today. So here we are. We're going to go over these decks. They are both aggressive decks. They're packed full of hasty and efficient creatures, and they have a mix of direct damage and or discard. I'm going to start with the first one. This one came in at the 6th spot. It was titled Aggression. It was piloted by Paul Ferker, and it was a mono red deck. If I'm getting that name right, Ferker. F-E-R-K-E-R, Paul Ferker. I'm going to start with the creatures. There were 21 creatures in this deck. There were 7 1-drops. So the 1-drops were 4 Keeper of Cookus. If you remember Cookus, Alex, from Mirage, a djinn from Mirage. These were the goblins that kept the Cookus. It's not very interesting, really, but it can be sacrificed to the other 1-drop that has an interesting ability. So Keeper of Cookus is just 1 red, 1/1. You can pay 1 red and give it protection from red until end of turn. So it's a nice little run drop with something that can survive a lightning bolt, you know, if you
Yeah, and at this point, your goblin options were limited enough that really anything that had like a tiny special ability was better than, just like a vanilla, 1/1 drop or whatever.
Yes. I mean, back in these days, we were playing vanilla 1/1 drops.
Yeah, like
so anything with a special ability was automatically, a step ahead. The other 1-drop he played were 3 Goblin Soothsayers. This was a card we looked at just recently when we were going through Robert Bliss's artwork in Magic the Gathering. Goblin Soothsayer is 1 red, 1/1, summon goblin. Pay 1 red, tap it, sacrifice a goblin. All red creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a creature that I do like. It's for like a aggressive, creature-focused red deck. To give all your red creatures +1/+1 can help you end the game, a turn sooner. That's not bad at all. So I like that you could drop the Cookus, and you can sacrifice the Cookus to the Soothsayer potentially later in the game when your 1/1 Cookus isn't doing much for you, to help finish off your opponent, to help beef up a blocker, whatever. It comes in handy.
So you could actually use that. I know you didn't get to Goblin Tinkerer yet, but you could use that with the Goblin Tinkerer, right? Couldn't destroy the artifact with the Tinkerer, and the artifact will now deal the damage to the Tinkerer, and then as an instant, you can sacrifice the Tinkerer that was going to die anyways to give all of your red creatures +1/+1.
Yeah, so you can get an extra bonus out of that. That's actually pretty good interaction. He has 5 2-drops in this deck. Here he added 2 creatures from Visions in Mirage that have excellent removal abilities. The Dwarven Miner, which we've talked about in our 3-deuce episode, the 1 colorless, 1 red, 1/2, summon dwarf, pay 2 colorless, 1 red, tap it to destroy non-basic land. Comes in handy. That's quite a fancy special ability. Repeated land destruction. And then you have your Goblin Tinkerer, which Alex just mentioned. 1 colorless, 1 red, 1/2, summon goblin, pay a red, tap it to destroy our target artifact. That artifact deals an amount of damage equal to its casting costs to Goblin Tinkerer. Oh, well, I'll sacrifice it to my Soothsayer and give everything +1/+1 anyways. I'll destroy your artifacts and get +1/+1 for all my creatures until end of turn. So those are 2 nice 2-drops, actually, that are available to you in this block. And then you move on to the 3-drops. This is where you get to the Hasty Boys and a Flanker. So each has an ability that allows them to perform above rate when they attack. The Searing Spear Ascari, we touched on briefly in a Mirage episode when we were talking about the Knights in Mirage. 2 colorless, 1 red, 2/2, Flanker, which means a creature without flanking, whenever a creature without a flanking blocks this creature, the blocking creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn. So it's like it's almost like a conditional +1/+1. You could also pay 1 colorless and 1 red. Searing Spear Ascari cannot be blocked by only 1 creature this turn. So in some cases, you can make them unblockable. And then the Tau Room Minotaur. Finally, we see Mirage block Minotaur in a deck. This is just a 3/3 with haste. So it's 4 mana, but it's essentially like a 3 casting cost attacker because you can attack with it on the turn it comes into play. And then this fellow that I really enjoyed from Visions. Another Hasty Boy. This is my favorite Hasty Boy from the Mirage block. Unless there's something I'm forgetting. This is the one that stuck in my head. Viashino Sandstalker. It's 1 colorless, 2 red, 4/2. If only this guy had trample, but he doesn't. He's still good without trample. Viashino Sandstalker is unaffected by summoning sickness. So you can attack for 4 once you get 3 mana. At the end of any turn, return Viashino Sandstalker to owner's hand. So one benefit of this is like he avoids sorcery speed board wipes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing against a blue-white control deck, a white control deck with Wrath of Gods, you don't have to worry about that taking out your Sandstalker. It's a good mana. It's a good mana sink too. It's mana hungry, but it's also a good mana sink when you don't have anything else to do with your mana.
Yeah, well, it's nice with the what was the last one? The Searing Spear of Ascari.
Yes.
Because you can make, like, if you want to sacrifice the Ascari, you can make multiple blockers block it, let the Viashino get through, and then it returns to your hand unscathed.
Wait, say that again. What do you mean sacrifice this?
So the Searing Spear of
yeah.
Ascari, like you said, you can make it
Yes.
unblockable in some situations, but you can also make things block it.
Yes, true. Yes.
And clear the way for your other creatures.
You're right. Okay.
Like the Sandstalker, and then it comes back to your hand, and then you get to use it again.
And then the final Hasty Boy. I have the Time Spiral version pulled up here. What the hell am I doing, Alex? Cicada Lancer is a Visions card. Tell me I'm not wrong. I liked the, yes, it's
We just
Visions.
talked about it. Yeah.
I liked the Cicada Lancer a lot. I know I threw this guy into some decks at the time too. I don't have any decks where it was like focused on playing a bunch of, I never had like a mono red deck from this time, but I know that Cicada Lancer just made it into some of my creature focused red decks or red green decks because it's a pretty good card. It's above rate too. It's 2 colorless, 1 red, 2/2, unaffected by summoning sickness, so it has haste and it's a flanker.
Yeah, it has 2 abilities. I mean, it's
2 abilities.
I agree. It's a pretty cool card. I'd like to use it more. I've never messed around with it, I don't think.
So those are the creatures. You got a couple 1-drops with special abilities. You got 2-drops with special abilities. They're able to remove a lot of the things that you want to remove in the game of Magic the Gathering. And then everything 3 or 4 comes in with haste or flanking. You have 7 sorceries in this deck. 4 Hammers of Bogardon. 3 Caravex Torches. We've talked about both recently. The hammer's expensive, but again, a good mana sink. Want to make sure you're putting your mana into something every turn. You could always use that mana to bring the hammer back to your hand to replay the hammer. And then the torch, which helps you push damage through against the evil blue mages. We've talked about that too.
The evil blue mages.
I'm surprised by 4 hammers.
That was the thing that I noticed too. I was going to wait till the end and then like complain about that. Like, not that I don't really mean complain, but it seems like a lot to me. I'd kind of, if it were me, I probably would have tried to put 1 or 2 in.
I think that's right.
Okay.
I think in a format where hammers are the kind of card you want to play, I think the correct number of hammers is 2 hammers.
Okay.
Ask me why that is. I don't know. It's just vibes. But 4 seems to have definitely too many. You don't want to pull a second hammer.
Yeah, like it's more of like a later game card to me. Like you might get to use it early for its initial cost, but later on it's a mana dump if you need it. So if you only draw 1 later in the game or even early, that's cool. I probably would have focused on some of those creatures, maybe popped in 2 more Hasty Boys.
Yeah. Well, can we pop in more Hasty Boys? Yeah, we could have popped in more Minotaurs. We could have popped in another Sandstalker. And then the instants. You have 9 instants in this deck. You have Final Fortune. Talked about that before. Helps you end the game 1 turn sooner. 4 Fire Blast, which once Visions came along, you play Fire Blast in a red deck. That is what you do. 4 number of Fire Blasts is also always the correct number of Fire Blasts in a red deck.
Okay.
I think so. How do you feel? Mono red deck.
How more than 2, yeah.
Definitely more than 2.
3 or 4.
I think 4 is the correct number.
In a deck from this era, as you open up the card pool, obviously you have different options and stuff, but yeah. This card's very strong in that era.
Yeah, even in pre-modern red, pre-modern burn, I'm not a burn expert. Not at all. But it's hard to think of something that performs better than Fire Blast.
Yeah. Yeah, very strong.
Especially like so in a format where you have like pre-modern, you can play lightning bolts too. You can drop 2 bolts and sack your mountains to cast 1 Fire Blast and do 10 damage on 1 turn.
You can
I mean,
eliminate a big threat target before, like
yeah.
when you're tapped out, you can
And then you have incinerates. I wrote 3 incinerates. I see 4 here. I don't know which one's right. How many cards are in this deck? If there's 61 cards, then that means I should have 3 incinerates there. Let me scan down to the bottom. 60 main deck. Okay. So the 4 incinerates is right. You ran 4 incinerates. And this is because you didn't have lightning bolt available to you in this format. I liked incinerate, but of course it's not as good as lightning bolt. When you don't have lightning bolts available to you, you play incinerates. Lands, mountains, and quicksand. There's not much to say there. Alex, you
okay.
love the quicksand. You've been casting quicksand against me.
I haven't used any
Not,
recently, I don't think. It was
I
a
was
whole
gonna say
while ago.
not infrequently, like multiple decks you've had.
I've
You
put
brought
it
out
in a
quicksand.
few.
Yeah,
I like it. It's,
it's
I'm
not
not
bad.
sure when to have it and when not. It's a little tough for me to figure out exactly when to put it in.
Target attacking creature without flying gets -1, -2 until end of turn. I don't know. If you're scared about a Goblin Lackey, quicksand isn't bad to have in your deck.
I mean, I'm a little surprised it's in here because with red, you already have a lot of removal options, but maybe he was just like, I just want all the removal. And, maybe things have protection from red, so it helps get around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it does fit into monocolor decks fairly well because then you're not as worried about the rest of your mana base. You can afford to have some, uh, you know, uncolored lands.
Yeah, exactly. And he's playing in a format where there's definitely other people playing these cards too. Some of the best creatures are the Sandstalker, the Sukkata Lancer. They have two toughness, so I mean the quicksand takes them out. It's nice to have them, around, I think. And then the sideboard. The sideboard selections get spicy. There were cards in here that I haven't seen for a while, or even some cards I didn't remember at all. And that's just because I think you don't have many options, in the Mirage Visions limited card pool in
And you're
red.
looking for maybe some very specific effects because it's
Yeah.
a sideboard.
First one, he had 2 Bogarden Phoenixes, 2 colorless, 3 red, 3/3 flying. If the Phoenix is put into any graveyard from play and has no death counter on it, return it to play and put a death counter on it. If Bogarden Phoenix is put into any graveyard from play and has a death counter on it, remove it from the game. So essentially you get two uses out of this.
The
It gets
two-time Phoenix.
dies once and it comes back again. I don't know. I was looking at this and I'm looking at the rest of the decks in the top 8. And I honestly don't know, like, when you board this in, it doesn't seem very good. It's 5 mana for a 3/3. I was
Maybe
just
it's for
thinking,
when they have a lot of good ground blockers or something,
did
maybe in this format with like Wall of Roots and like maybe they had some like chunky ground blockers that you had to get over.
did you read the notes or did you just say that out of the blue? Because I
No, I
want
just
to.
said that in blue.
Okay, perfect. So maybe that might be it because that's exactly what I sketched down here. I was like, maybe if you have too many, maybe your opponent has too many blockers and you just need to fly in
Oh,
for some
okay.
damage.
All right.
That's what I was thinking too. I couldn't think of another reason why you would have the Bogarden Phoenix in your sideboard. But if you had the same thought,
Yeah,
maybe
because I mean it's not a really good flying blocker because it's only 3/3.
exactly.
Although you can pump it with your red weird goblin
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
whatever that is. But yeah, I feel like it's probably more. I don't know.
Well, we were both thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
The second one was a card I didn't remember. Builder's Bane. It's 1 red XX sorcery. Destroy X target artifacts. For each artifact put into the graveyard in this way, Builder's Bane deals 1 damage to that artifact's controller. Not the best. But I was looking through the Mirage Visions card pool, and I think this and Tinkerer, the Goblin Tinkerer, are your only options for getting rid of non-artifact creatures in red. So you're very limited. So if you're playing
Non-creature
against,
artifacts?
yes, I said non-artifact creatures. I meant non-creature artifacts.
What about, is Shatter like not in this now? Because it's
No.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, they didn't print it in Mirage. Mirage had some staples that they printed. They didn't print Shatter.
Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm confused now. This is like
It's
this is a
literally
deck that's
just Mirage Visions constructed.
no fourth or fifth edition. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
There was Hearth Charm in Visions, but that can destroy artifact creatures. So if you needed to get rid of a non-creature artifact, this was it.
Yeah.
That in Tinkerer.
And I mean it does have a little bit of versatility in that you can deal a tiny bit of damage with it, and you can target 2 artifacts if you're willing to pay a lot of mana. Other than that, yeah, I guess it's just, it's a shatter that deals damage.
Yeah, you just don't see it in larger formats because there's better options for you.
Yeah.
Sand Golem. 5 colorless 3/3 artifact creature. If a spell or effect controlled by an opponent causes you to discard Sand Golem, put Sand Golem from your graveyard into play at end of turn with a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is something that you board in against discard decks. And Mirage Visions, there were definitely stupors and coercions floating around. So
And Guerrilla Tactics was in alliances, so you couldn't use that.
yes, I just said coercion, but coercion they get to choose what you discard. So they're probably never going to choose the Sand Golem.
Yeah, good point.
But there were stupors floating around. And also you could just hold the Sand Golem in your hand and empty everything out of your hand. Potentially, maybe, would be funny. If it's all that's in your hand, they play their coercion.
Yeah.
And then it's like
down to
sucks
one
be
card
right
yeah.
now. In a case like that, can they choose not to take anything? I don't remember the exact language on coercion.
It probably depends on the individual card, but I would say no, probably based on the general idea. Usually when it tells you that you have, like, there's no, like, a cost like that where it tells you have to do it, like you're locked in, you might have to sacrifice your own creature if the opponent doesn't have one or whatever. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a card from it. That player discards that card. So yeah, you'd have to pick
You
the
choose.
one card.
Being distracted by crazy lightning out the window.
Uh-oh.
It's happening. The next 2 cards, Subterranean Spirit and Tremor, both give you a 1 damage earthquake, essentially. Subterranean Spirit's a card I never play because it's expensive, mana-wise. 3 colorless, 2 red, 3/3. Summon Elemental, protection from red. Tap it to deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. So, a good little way to kill a bunch of elves, but it's 5 mana. Tremor is a card from Visions. I didn't remember this card at all, but it is 1 red sorcery. Tremor deals 1 damage to each creature without flying. And I don't hate that. I was thinking to myself, maybe I fit this into one of my Varchild's War Riders decks. I have the red-green one, which I like. I'm definitely going to make some more changes to it as I play it. Red-green, I have some moon. I think I'm going to stick with some moon because I could take out Birds of Paradise and stuff too. But
I'm trying to build more than the 4 Simoons, though.
I could need more than 4 Simoons. Yeah, so maybe this still goes in the sideboard. And I'm trying to build a red-black one too. And I don't have Simoon available to me. I have things like Plague Spitter available to me, but
I was going to say Pestilence type. Yeah, okay.
I'm thinking about a Tremor, at least in the sideboard for that.
The Subterranean Spirit would actually be good in that too, even though it's 5 mana. Probably won't make
it's just a 5 mana thing that bothers me.
You can you can wipe out the Varchild's tokens with that.
Yes. And actually, it is repeatable.
Yeah.
I wish the Subterranean Spirit was 3/4. Not boltable,
Yeah.
John Bolton, illustrator, Michael Bolton's father, actually. And Tremor, funnily enough, illustrated by Michael Danza, Tony Danza's son. Next card in the sideboard is Wand of Denial. 2 colorless. Artifact. Tap, look at the top card of target player's library. If that card is a non-land card, you may pay 2 life to put it into that player's graveyard. I thought, what do you do with this? Maybe bring it against a combo deck? Try to keep them from drawing a combo piece? I never played Wand of Denial back in the day.
So there's top of the
there's
deck tutors in this format.
I was just gonna say there's the Mirage tutors exist, yeah.
You could also use it on yourself. It's not like wouldn't be great, I guess, but I mean,
No, but you could if you're just trying to find something really quick. It could help
yeah.
you. Could help you. I'm thinking combos, especially combo decks that run the Mirage tutors.
Yeah, I'm thinking the tutors probably mostly. Oh, the Wildfire Emissary. All right.
Wildfire Emissary, 3 colorless, 1 red, 2/4, summon a free pro white, 1 colorless, 1 red, gives it +1/+0 until end of turn. I love this card. I think you board this in if your opponent's playing Swords to Plowshares. Which, now that I say that, not printed in either Visions or Mirage.
Okay.
Maybe bring it against White Weenie. I don't know if you could make a White Weenie deck in Visions or Mirage. It's also just a good card. Although what makes it really good is the protection from white. I wonder what in this format in white people were using for removal for creature
There's
removal.
probably at least some,
There's got to be
red
something.
hate in protection from white. So you play someone that's playing white, and then second and third game you sideboard that in because you know they're going to have the white card that deals damage to all of your red stuff. Maybe. I'm thinking of it as like anti-white red hate.
Okay.
But maybe
there's got to be. I'm just not thinking of exactly what it would be in there for now.
Yeah, because I can't think of a card specifically.
Yeah. Things I like about the deck: low mana curve. So almost everything is 3 mana or below. I think the only forecasting cost card is the Heirloom Minotaur. Not the Heirloom Minotaur. That's the original Minotaur printed in Alpha. The Towroom Minotaur. And yes, that's 4 mana, but it's not affected by summoning sickness. So you're attacking with it on the same turn you could attack with a 3 casting cost creature. And then I like that there's always something to sink mana into. Creatures to play out on curve, Hammer, which you can replay. There's some X spells. There's a Viashino Sandstalker, or although in the case of the Sandstalker, it's kind of a downside that you have to replay it, but still, always something to do with the mana. These are things I'm thinking about a lot since we've been going through all these decks, getting back into Magic, learn how to play again, think about how to design decks. I'm very much focused. I've said this multiple times. I didn't realize previously, because I was a young child, and you see big cards with huge power toughness, and you don't think as much about their casting cost. And of course, we got better with that over time. We very quickly stopped playing Forces of Nature and Lord of the Pit in every deck. But still, I didn't build decks really where I topped out my mana curve at 3 and only put something in there above 3 if I'm like, this is going to win me the game when it hits the board. And you see that a lot with tournament decks. It's like very lower mana curves that I'm used to playing. I was a little bit more prone to play, like, maybe more 4 casting costs and 5 casting cost cards.
Yes, yeah.
Than you'd see in these competitive decks.
Forecasting cost cards. I feel like I had probably too many of those around. And then, you'd be like, okay, well, what are the most expensive cards I could fit in? And there'd be 2 or 3 cards with high casting cost, and you kind of try to like cram them in there because you could, but like you said, it's not really optimal.
And then always something to do with your mana. Although I feel like I got better at that during our time playing when we were kids. I played a lot of like Jam Day Tome and stuff, so if
I think you were good about that really early on. I probably ignored that element.
So that's the number 6 spot deck by Paul Ferker, titled Aggression. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. This feels very familiar to me as like, a mono red deck from that time.
Yeah. Pick a format. You could build a red deck similar to this.
Yeah, make just a few subs.
Different creatures, but, similar in spirit. Coming in the second spot, this is something that's probably more similar to the types of things that I would remember you playing back in the day. This deck is called Voodoo by Mark Justice. This deck made it to the finals against the deck we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode. It's a combo deck that I want to start playing just for fun. It's a black-red deck. It's a classic mix of aggressive creatures, direct damage, discard, a few other things that black-red Magic is good at. So starting with the creatures in this deck, you have 15 creatures. The 1-drop is Shadow Guildmage, part of the Guildmage cycle, which we also talked about recently, which I overlooked back when Mirage was printed, and I just started playing now after we did an episode on 3-Deuce. It's performed well for me. I mean, I was really happy with it when I dropped my, I didn't play Shadow Guildmage, I played Granger Guildmage against you. But I was really happy with how the Granger Guildmage did against the decks that you were playing. It just, this ability right here, which is why I'm bringing up the Granger Guildmage. The Shadow Guildmage and the Granger Guildmage share this ability. You could pay 1 red mana and tap them to deal 1 damage to target creature or player and 1 damage to you. That just comes in handy a lot.
Yeah, I think I underestimated that back then. I didn't hate these cards because I remember having them in my box with my Mirage stuff and looking at them and being kind of like, I'd like to fit this in, but I thought maybe they were just a little too underpowered, and I overemphasized the taking 1 damage aspect of it, But I played black red for a while, and I feel like this would have been a good addition to my deck. I should have put it in.
This also has the ability, pay 1 blue mana, tap it, put target creature you control on top of owner's library. So that can be very helpful to, combat removal, but I don't think there's any there's no, oh no. Yes, there's 1 undiscovered paradise in this deck. So maybe you use that every once in a while.
No, you could definitely do something like that, or even just throw in 1 City of Brass, or 1 more undiscovered paradise, and you have that as an option, like maybe late game. It's not part of your main strategy, but it's a combat trick for you that they're not expecting because they've seen nothing but red black so far.
2-drop, the 2-drop spot, you have Forefall on Ascari. Again, one of the knights. These were pretty solid creatures in Mirage and Visions. The knights, the flanking knights. So 1 colorless, 1 black, 2/2 with flanking. It cannot block, but you don't care in this particular type of deck because you're full on aggro.
Yep.
In the 3-drop spot, again, on the 3-drop and 4-drop spot, you have some Hasty Boys. This is why the segment is titled The Hasty Boys of Mirage and Visions. You got these 2 top 8 decks full of hasty creatures. 4x Viashano Sandstalkers. He went with 4x Talroom Minotaurs. And then you have 9 sorceries. Direct damage, you have 3 Carevex Torch, and then 1x Hammer of Bogarden. 1 to 2 is the correct number of Hammers of Bogarden. So Mark Justice is right here. Although I don't think Mark Justice designed this deck. I was reading something the other day. I think, I could be wrong, but what I read somewhere was that this deck was designed by Mike Long, who was the person who Mark Justice played against in the finals match in this Pro Tour Paris tournament. So
exciting.
Which, if you haven't watched that, I'm going to send you a link, Alex. You need to watch that episode. You need to watch that game, the match on YouTube, because it's on YouTube, and it's just, Mike Long is insufferable. He's wearing I don't know him personally. I think he played this up as kind of a character, but he might also, I'm sure he was also kind of like this in real life. He's like a 90s, almost like I was gonna say a 90s movie bully, although I don't think we had a lot of 90s movies where there was a bully character like this. It was a bigger trope in the 80s, like 80s movies bullies. He was wearing a no fear shirt. I mean, a no fear hat, which is exactly what this type of guy would have been wearing in the 90s at a Magic tournament. And he just talked shit the entire game. He talked shit and he just acted like really weird. It was very bizarre. And it was all designed to throw his opponent off, I'm sure, but it was like, it's insufferable.
You've just seen White Men Can't Jump And
Yes. Yes. So there's 9 sorceries in the deck, 4 coercion. Sorry. I have 3 Carevex Torch, 1 Hammer of Bogarden, and then you get to discard. 4 coercion, which is targeted hand disruption. There are lots of 1 mana discard spells now. You know, there's like duress.
yeah, it seems so expensive compared.
There's Thoughtseize, which I don't even know what it does yet because it's in a format that I haven't played yet. And we haven't gotten to that set, but I know everybody's always talking about Thoughtseize. There's Cabal Therapy, which you can get back by sacrificing a creature. But before those cards, and after Minotaur, which you can't play here, there's Coercion.
And it was
good in
still the
this format.
first targeted discard, I think. I don't think there was anything before that lets you look at their hand and pick, right?
That might be
I wanna
right,
say-
actually.
I don't want to say that definitively because there might have been something that did that and had like a bad downside, but I think that was pretty fresh.
It might be right. You might be right because I mean, of course, there was Mind Twist, but that's you know, people flip over their hand and you choose random.
Yeah, that's random. Minotaur's random.
Minotaur is random. Those are the 2 that I played. Hypnotic Specters, random.
Mhm.
And then there was Coercion, which I think you are right. I think it's the first targeted. It's at least the first one I can remember. But yeah, it seems expensive now. 2 colorless, 1 black. Sorcery, look at target opponent's hand, choose a card from that player's hand. Player discards the card. It is still a great combo buster, even though it's more expensive than other
And
discards.
are there no dark rituals in this deck?
No. But
Okay.
Dark Ritual was reprinted in Mirage, but yeah, there are no Dark Rituals in this deck. Hold on. Yes, that's correct. Just scroll down. There's 1 Stupor, because you can't play 5 coercions, so you put in 1 Stupor.
Okay.
Which is 2 colorless, 1 black, sorcery, target opponent discards a card at random. Then chooses and discards a card. I guess it's not just a worse coercion. It's you get 2 cards for it.
Yeah, you get 2 cards, so
You get 2 cards for it. But I like the coercion. I usually play the coercion over that. I guess if you're playing like a rack deck or something, you play Stupor. You get two cards instead of 1. But I like the targeted discard in most cases. And then an instance, you have 4 Fire Blast, which is the correct number of Fire Blast, 4 Incinerate, and then something exciting, a Carevex Spite.
oh, nice.
3 black instant from Visions. Sacrifice all permanents, discard your hand, target player loses 5 life. This is just when you want to go all in. Bring your opponent from less than or equal to 5 life down to 0.
And you fire blast at the same time.
And you
can
Fire
deal
Blast at the
9
same time.
damage.
That's true. Like that's actually, that works really nicely with Fire Blast.
Yeah. I think that's something I never thought of back then, and I should, that would have been great to think of the combo between those 2 cards. I think Carevex Spite is reserve list also. Is that true?
That sounds right. I also think it is.
Yeah. Pretty unique effect. It's sort of like the old school hatred.
Definitely don't think it's been reprinted. It is reserve.
Yeah, it's reserve
yes.
list.
It's reserve. And now we get to the card that really confuses me. There's 1 artifact in this deck. And it's a fucking snake basket, Alex. Mark Justice took a fucking snake basket all the way to the top 2 of a Pro Tour in Paris in 1997. Other cards like the Phoenix in the last deck, I look at and I'm like, oh, why'd they run this card in this deck? I try to think of a reason. The Builder's Bane, it's because you didn't have, that was the best non-creature, artifact removal you had available to you in Mirage and Visions. The snake basket. I don't know why you run a snake basket. It's 4 colorless artifact. Pay X colorless, sacrifice snake basket, put X Cobra tokens into play. Treat these tokens as 1/1 green creatures. Play this ability as a sorcery. It's not even anything that like he has the ability to he doesn't have like anything to like, he has no green creature anthem effect, what I'm trying to say. So you can't turn them into anything better than just plain old 1/1 green snakes. Just don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm not sure.
something to feed your mana into, but I guess I would just put in another Carevex Torch and just torch them in the face instead. Need to generate a bunch of blockers? I don't know.
Even a drain life. I mean,
Yes.
you won't be able to pull off as big of one, but you'll get the, the double spread, the life gain with the damage. So,
So I don't get it.
I mean, I don't hate Snake Basket, but it's hard to fit it into a deck and not want to take it out for something else. Like,
It's never stayed in it. I don't think it's ever made it into one of my decks, but yeah.
it's cool that you can use it as an instant and generate blockers at instant speed.
Yeah.
It's a good mana dump late in the game, maybe. Like you can make a whole bunch of 1/1s, but like you said, you could just make, cast another direct damage. You're playing red and black.
Yeah.
There's probably some reason we just don't get it.
That's what I'm trying to think. I got nothing.
I wonder if there's something in the meta where like green creatures would be problematic for some reason.
Not
But
that I can think of.
that seems
Maybe,
crazy.
like I said, I believe the number two or the person who won this tournament, Mike Long, faced this deck in the finals. I believe he designed this deck. Maybe he knew he was going to face his buddy Mark Justice in the finals, and he stuck a snake basket in the deck just
As
to
a
screw
trick.
with him. Who
Maybe
knows?
they're worried about prot red and prot black, and they need something
That's what I
to get
thought.
through.
I thought maybe they're concerned about protection from red. Your Fire Blast, your Incinerate, your Hammer, your Carevex Torch, your Minotaur, and your Sandstalker are all red. That leaves you nothing but the Guild Mage and the Ascari to do just small amounts of damage with. But if that's what you're worried about, I still don't think. I mean, the Snake Basket is still a hard way to
A lot
finish
of
your
other
opponent.
options, yeah.
And then you have one enchantment. He just has one copy of Necromancy, which is 2 colorless, 1 black. You may choose to play Necromancy as an instant if you do bury it in a turn. When you play it, choose target creature in any graveyard. When Necromancy comes into play, put that creature into play as though it were just played, and Necromancy becomes a creature enchantment that targets the creature. If Necromancy leaves play, bury the creature. So it's a card you can use to bring things back from your graveyard. I don't know if there's any one specific reason to have a Necromancy in this deck. I just thought,
Well,
maybe you can cause your opponent to discard something big and then steal it from their graveyard. I don't know. That might happen quite often.
yeah, I was gonna say maybe more for your opponent's graveyard, stealing something or something you've killed with direct damage already. I try to do that. I don't know if it's smart, but I try to do that in a lot of the decks. I may just throw in like one reanimate because I'm like, maybe I want to get something out of their graveyard.
Yeah, it's not a terrible idea. You don't know what you're facing necessarily. You don't know what you're going to face necessarily every time you sit down, start a match.
Yeah, and if they're
And
prepared for your deck, they might not be prepared for one of the creatures they have in their deck. It doesn't have the same color profile or might be flying or something instead.
so I think it could come very much in handy. It could also be just a dead card in the first game and then you board it out. That's my thought.
Also, you have like the haste creatures that are a little bit fragile, so you can bring them back with that.
Yeah.
Not the best use, but it's.
Lands, 25 lands, 10 mountains, which is a little bit scary actually with four fire blasts. You're going to want to be judicious about your fire blast use because you might not have that many mountains.
Rocky Tar Pit's a fetch, right? Is it a fetch?
2 quicksand, 4 rocky tar pit, tap, search your mountain for a swamp or mountain card. Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay,
So
that'll
that
help
helps out.
with the fire blast.
That helps out. 8 swamp, and then again, 1 undiscovered paradise if you want a blue mana for your Shadow Guild Mage.
Stoked. First card in the sideboard.
The sideboard. The first card in the sideboard is Elkin Lair.
Love it.
A very weird enchant world from Visions that I've never played, but I've stared at it for many years. 3 colorless, 1 red. Alex, this is what you looked like on my screen. What was it, like 30 minutes ago when I asked why everything was so red? This is what your room looked like.
Sorry.
During each player's upkeep, that player chooses a card at random from his or her hand, sets it aside face up. The player may play that card as though it were in his or her hand. If the player does not play the card by end of turn, bury that card. Is this just to empty somebody's hand faster?
I I didn't think about what it does in this deck yet, really, because I just saw it. But I'm thinking it's just more discard.
It's more discard. I'm also thinking if this hits the board against a blue deck with a lot of counter magic, this can become a huge pain in the ass for them, right? Because they can't just sit there and hold a handful of counters
Yeah, if you
all
get it out
game.
early enough, then they might be discarding counter spells. They can't, discard your targeted removal or discard your, counter your, you know what I meant. Sorry.
Yes.
Counter your
Counter.
discard spell or whatever.
During each player's upkeep, but then you have to do it too.
You have to do it too, yes.
Okay. This is why I've never played this card, because I'm always like, is this going to do me any good?
Yeah. But it's good with black red because now you can get your stuff back out of the graveyard, maybe.
It is good black red. You can get their stuff out of the graveyard too, maybe. But it's a bit of a confusing card. It's an unusual card.
And it will destroy another enchant world.
And it will destroy another enchant world, which I don't think was a huge problem here in Visions
Probably not.
and Mirage,
Like
although they're
this and
definitely,
Forsaken Wastes.
yes, they're
And there's
definitely
probably more, but I can't think of any more.
definitely enchant worlds and Mirage. Then you go into 3 Funeral Charms, 1 black instant. This is a charm that has 3 different effects you choose. Target player chooses and discards a card. That's actually really good. Here you have a 1 mana discard.
I like this card.
Yeah. Or target creature gets +2/-1 until end of turn. So it could be a bird killer, it could be a discard, or target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn, which you're not going to use it for that very often, but sometimes comes in handy.
Good. And the +2/-1 is nice because that can be small creature removal or it can be buffing for one of your creatures.
Yes.
It's
it could
pretty some options.
1 turn Unholy Strength. Another copy of Necromancy for Necrotals. If you're playing another creature heavy deck, I'm assuming. I like this card very much, but it's always just a little bit too high casting cost, but it's just cool. I like it.
That's the
art's
thing. Yeah, I
incredible.
put it into some decks recently and then like kind of taken it out. But I do like it. Super fun and something that where you can keep bringing it back and using that battlefield effect, over and over again out of the graveyard.
2/1 first strike comes into play. Bury target non-artifact, non-black creature. So this is a terror on a stick. I always like the art illustrated by Adrian Smith, related to the economist Adam Smith, many generations removed. 3 Stupor. I forgot to mention the Stupor was illustrated by Mike Kimball, nephew of comedian and late night talk show host Jimmy Kimball. And then Torrent of Lava is 2 red, X, sorcery. Torrent of Lava deals X damage to each creature without flying. Each creature gains tap, prevent 1 damage to this creature from Torrent of Lava. Very weird card.
Yeah, that is a weird card.
I don't know why
I don't think I could ever put that in a deck and be like confident that
this is gonna do me good.
Yeah, and then like my opponent might not kind of flip it around on me, or I mean, I guess in worst case scenario, all they're really doing is nullifying some of the damage of it.
Do you just use it to punish people who have all their mana elves tapped or something? I don't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it hits the tapped creatures hard because they can only save themselves. They can't tap to save a different creature. So anything that's tapped, you could kill
This
with
creature,
it.
yes.
And if you spend 2 mana on the X, then they can still only prevent 1 damage of it.
Yeah.
So you could still kill things that could like tap to prevent the 1 damage. But yeah, why not just more of like earthquakes or again, Mirage and Visions. Okay, so
no earthquakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess maybe he ran into some cases where just the 1 damage from Trimper just wasn't enough to get rid of what he wanted to get rid of. So he wanted an earthquake, and this was the best thing that was available to him.
Okay.
Maybe that's the simple answer.
The more I think about it, the less like I can see how it could be useful.
Yeah, we just never play it because we always just have better options.
Yeah.
I've never tried to build a deck in just Mirage Visions only.
I like those
Different
ostrich
restrictions.
type
It is neat
birds
art.
on
Yeah.
there running away from the lava.
That's a good way to spice up any artwork. If anybody's, any artist listening, just throw some ostriches or some emus in the foreground. Always looks cool.
Add some action to the picture.
Things I like about the deck. Low mana curve again, almost all 1 to 3 mana. What are the forecasting cost creatures? I think it's again just the 4 Herloon, not Herloon Minotaurs. Tau Room Minotaurs.
And then the snake basket,
And then Snake Basket, of
not
course.
a creature, but
That's my favorite thing, the Snake Basket. And then Element of Disruption added by discard. So you go from straight red aggro to aggro discard. Strong deck. Came in at number 2 in the tournament, lost in the finals to Crossbloom, which we're going to do a deep dive on at some point.
okay, so the only other thing I can think of is with Karavek Spite. Again, like you could, you're using Karavek Spite, and that's kind of like a wipe for you. So you can activate the snake basket to generate tokens that survive the wipe. Would that work?
I think.
Maybe not. I think they'd still come into play before you had to kill all of your permanents, right?
Do they?
I don't know.
Son of a bitch, Alex. Why'd you have to bring this up?
I shouldn't have brought it up.
Caravex, don't bring things up unless you know the answer. Caravex Spite. Now we got to think about it. Ask ChatGPT. Caravex Spite, 3 black, instant. Sacrifice all permanents, discard your hand. Target player loses 5 life. Snake Basket. Feed X into it. Sacrifice Snake Basket. Yeah, so if you sacrifice Snake Basket first, and then you play Caravex Spite,
That'd be no good.
that's no good.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it the other way.
So I'm going through the 2 options.
Yeah,
if you care, that's no good. So we know that's not going to work. If you play Caravex Spite first, and then you say, I'm sacrificing the Snake Basket, that goes on top of the stack. That doesn't work either.
Yeah, because the tokens still come into play, I think, before. And I looked on Caravex, it doesn't have a ruling or anything about the timing of that. So
I said sacrifice this, that goes on top of the stack. You can only play his ability as a sorcery anyways.
oh God. Okay.
I don't think a Snake Basket will work in any way with Caravex Spite. I don't
That
think
whole
so.
part I said earlier too, I was like, you can use Snake Basket as an instant to generate blockers. That is
You did
not
say
correct.
that. Alex, come on. That's the kind of stuff I'm supposed to do.
I
And then
needed
you're
you to
supposed to
read the
correct me.
final part of the card for me and remind me of what it said.
This is 3 sentences, Alex. You expect me to get all the way through 3 sentences? When there's 3 sentences on a card, just know that I'm not going to make it to the 3rd. I mean, I'll read it, but I'm not going to be absorbing it. I zone out after the 2nd sentence, and then everything else that comes out of my mouth, I need you to absorb. Anyways, that's the number 2 deck. If I were to play one of these 2 decks, I'd go with Voodoo. I like Voodoo, and not just because it's number 2. I like that it has a little bit more diversity. It's not so specific in its game plan, just playing out on curve and attacking with red. The disruption, it just adds another element to the deck.
Yeah.
I always like to have some disruption.
Get another color in there, gives you some more
Combined
stuff
with
to do.
red.
Although I would still play the first deck. I think I'd just make 1 or 2 small changes to it.
Yeah, I like that too. I like just
Take out some of those extra hammers.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely do that. There's nothing wrong with, I guess this would be just like a standard red slide deck, just playing out red spells on curve, which are very good. They just run into some trouble sometimes, especially back in the day to like a cop red or something. At least if you have some discard, you get that out of the hand. Okay, those are the 2 decks that I wanted to talk about for now from PT Paris 1997. We're going to move on to the last segment of today's episode, just 2 segments today. We're going to finish up in the Old Mage Commander Corner, where we usually finish up with the podcast. I am going to add the 100th card to my 2024 Old Frame Commander deck. It's happening today. After today, it's going to be done, but it's going to need some play testing because it's not very good. I'm doing some gold fishing, not happy with it. I'm going to do some more gold fishing, and then I want to do some play testing. And then I'm definitely going to make some substitutions. So this is going to come back later in the year with some substitutions, I'm sure. Current 2024 Old Frame Commander deck is a deck with a Tog as my commander. It's all Old Frame ATOGs. I'm not running all of the Old Frame ATOGs. I chose the ones that I like the best, and actually some of the best ones. Enchantments. So I kind of started to go an enchantment focused route. There's a lot of enchantments in my deck, along with enchantresses and things that help me find enchantments like Academy Rector. And then the way I'm planning on winning with this deck is really going to be with commander damage. I think that's going to be my focus. Otherwise, I'm going to have a hell of a time, trying to take my opponents down from 40 life to 0 with just my Phantatog or my Thaumatog or my Atog. Life's going to be hard for me. So I think I need
but
to
they're gonna
focus.
soften them up for you, maybe, like people are gonna might not have to do all that damage yourself. So
Yeah, hopefully, but then also they might just see that I'm a sitting duck and they might just kill me right away. So, but if I intend to do a lot of damage to people, I'm really going to have to go the commander damage route. I think that's my current plan. That's going to be my focus. I'm going to see how well I can make that work. People out there listening, if you've had a commander deck that you've built that's been really focused almost entirely on winning a game via commander damage, let me know if that's, been a viable strategy for you. But since I started putting so many enchantments in, and since I'm focused on commander damage, which is going to take me a while to build up to with my Atog. I have to cast my Atog. I have to have other Togs on the board, and I have to waste up to pump them up to really make them big before I want to feed them to the Atog. These are all things that take some time. I kind of went, or I'm at least trying to go more of a pillow fort route with the enchantments. So I'm playing out enchantments that make it hard for people to attack me or dissuade them from attacking me. So, propaganda I put in to this deck. I'm running a Karmic Justice. I have something like Wonder in play, which might keep me alive as long as I have one creature on the board. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to add some lands. I'm currently at how many cards? 95, 96 cards, I think. 95 main deck. And I'm only at 37 lands. So I decided that I needed to add some more lands. And this is a 5-color deck. And when gold fishing, I'm definitely having trouble finding all my different land types as quickly as I would like to. So I'm going to add some more lands that generate, or at least have the ability to generate 5 different types of mana. Starting with City of Brass. I'm going to add a Chronicle City of Brass because I have one of those, not to brag. Chronicle City of Brass. I'm adding an Undiscovered Paradise because that also helps me generate any mana that I might want. Undiscovered Paradise. This is also very good, very good. Visions. I'm going to add a Thawing Glaciers to this deck. It takes a while. It is slow, but it's a nice way to help me ensure that eventually I get all of my different land types. I have basic lands of each of the different land types: 7 forests, 6 islands, 5 plains, 2 mountains, 3 swamps. So I can always fetch those with the Thawing Glaciers as needed. based on some gold fishing I did, I'm going to add 1 island, 6 to 7, and I'm going to remove 1 swamp, 3 to 2. And now, Alex, I'm going to add a card that I've thought about playing ever since I saw it in Mirage, and I've never, ever played it. And I think this is the deck that I'm going to try it in for the first time. That card is Celestial Dawn. If I get Celestial Dawn out, I don't need to give a fuck about whether or not I get all of my 5 mana types in. Celestial Dawn is an enchantment, and when Celestial Dawn hits the board, all lands I control are plains. All non-land cards I own that aren't in play, spells I control, and non-land permanents I control are white. And I may spend white mana as though it were mana of any color. You may spend other mana only as though it were colorless mana. I don't know if this is great or not, but I think it's not a bad card to spike into a 5-color commander deck.
It certainly fixes your mana problem, like, once you get it.
It fixes my mana problem.
Huh. Interesting.
Now, all lands I control are plains. That means like my Maze of Ith is now a plane. It can't do its thing.
A plane in addition?
It just says all lands are plains.
Let's look up the new text of that. What's it called again? Celestial Dawn?
Celestial Dawn. Celestialdon. Dawn.
It just says
It's a
lands
guy
you
named
control
Dawn.
are planes. I feel like that just makes them all planes.
I think they're all plains. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's a lot of rulings.
I know. I was looking at that the other day. Illustrated by Liz Danforth, aka Elizabeth Danforth, the wife of Chancellor Emeritus William Danforth and First Lady of Washington University for nearly a quarter century. She passed away March 30th, 2005 of cancer. But before that, she illustrated Celestial Dawn for Magic the Gathering.
Huh.
I made all of that up, by the way. I mean, I didn't make that up. There is an Elizabeth Danforth, and her name was all over buildings at the university I worked at before. But that is not this Liz Danforth.
I'm very confused now.
On to the next deck.
This is interesting. Hold up. If a
Okay.
non-basic land has an ability that causes it to enter the battlefield tapped, it will lose that ability before it applies.
Okay, so my Maze of Ith definitely ain't stopping no creatures.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, I think it's
Okay.
just a plains now.
It's a plains.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna sacrifice my
That's okay.
Maze of Ith and my Strip Mine for the ability to play out spells if I'm having trouble.
Well, and then later on, if you don't need the Celestial Dawn anymore,
I
you
can eat it.
get rid of it, or someone might destroy it, and then your Maze of Ith will be back on the table.
I have multiple creatures that can gobble up my Celestial Dawn when I don't want it any longer.
Yeah. Another thing, I don't know if you thought about this, but the lair lands might help a little bit. I don't know how heavy you want to go on them, but
So I've
there are
had
3
thoughts about, layer lands, and I've had thoughts about fetch lands. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I wouldn't know how to, do that the right way in a 5-color commander deck, like how many fetch lands to use. And
So most of my spells have white, blue, and green.
yeah, okay.
So I could start by adding the white. There is a white, blue, green layer land. I can't. Is it Treva something?
Treva's Ruins or
Treva's
Rift's Groves. Yeah, Treva's Ruins probably.
Rift's Grove is a white, green,
red.
red. So yeah, it's Treva's Ruins. That's actually not a bad idea. And then I have a Windswept Heath, so I could actually add the green, white. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll go with a Treva's Ruins and a Windswept Heath as my first attempt to improve my mana base. But that is an issue that I'm running into when I'm goldfishing the deck, just having trouble playing the things that are in my hand. The second issue is that if people decide to come after me first, I'm a sitting duck for quite a while. There's, many turns where I'm just playing out like 1/2s. So I need to try to find a way to get out my enchantments and other things that protect me
Yeah.
as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Maybe Wonder is going to be one of my very early and very frequent tutor targets. This is my thought at the moment. Okay. On to Alex's 2024 Old Frame Commander deck, titled Seaton's Power, with Seaton Crozen Protector at the helm.
Greeny weeny.
Greeny weeny. It's a
Green
green
druid
machine.
deck.
Okay.
I'm not sure what I want to add today. I know one card I want to add for sure. Nantuko Vigilante.
Nantuko Vigilante has been added to Alex's mono green deck. Nantuko Vigilante.
Vigilante.
Added right here. An insect druid mutant. I'm going to
One
switch.
green, 3 colorless.
Going to switch the printing to legions.
Thank you.
There we go. He destroys artifacts or enchantments. Alex, you're doing this just to destroy my enchantments, aren't you?
No, just some utility. It's what is that? 1 green, 3 colorless. I can't see.
Yes.
3/2, but it has a morph ability, so you can put it face down for 3 colorless and then turn it face up for 1 green, 1 colorless. And when it's turned face up, you destroy target artifact or enchantment. So it's just a little more removal for me while also being a druid.
And you have to morph this guy in if you want to use it.
Yeah, I'm not really ever going to hard cast this. It's going to be put down and then morphed. Lots of arm blades on this guy.
That's what I was looking at. It was he has leg blades too.
Oh yeah.
Imagine how many times he accidentally cuts himself.
I know.
It's not an infrequent occurrence, I guarantee. It'd be rough. It'd be a rough life. This is worse than Edward Scissorhands, what he had to go through.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay. At least he has a hide. That probably helps a lot. It appears to have a hide of some sort. I know he's
exoskeleton-y hide.
He's an insect, but he's also a mutant. So like there's all sorts of weird things going on with
it's halfway between
his coverings. Okay.
So here's where I'm at now. I think everything else is like a question mark that I have to go in here. Do you want to hear about some suggestions? Maybe I'll make a suggestion or two because I'd like to hear viewer opinions.
You have one more card to add, so yeah, let's go.
One more card. Okay. I'll give you a couple options for my card and see what you think. One card I was thinking about was Arena of the Ancients.
Arena of the Ancients.
Arena of the Ancients screws over Legends.
That's what I thought. I was like, is that the Legends card?
Yeah. It's 3 colorless, I believe, and when it comes into play, it taps all Legends, and then they don't untap, I think, if I have it right.
Is this legal in Commander?
Oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. Oh, you're probably right. It might not be legal in Commander.
Let me look here.
Good thing you're here, Steve.
Well, it is legal in Commander.
Oh, it is? Okay, all right. Okay. Well, I feel like this goes great with my commander because my commander doesn't need to be untapped to work.
That's true.
And other people, might have some big crazy commander that does something important, taps for multiple abilities, that sort of thing. So it can shut down my opponent's commanders and also other legends that they just happen to have in their deck. And I don't have too many. I have Kamal in my deck.
Yeah.
So it might hurt him a little bit, but I can use his ability even if he's tapped.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can use both of his abilities, right? You can still use him to animate lands.
And I can use Namada Grove Guardian's ability when she's tapped. So it doesn't really hurt me too much. And I think maybe it could screw over some of my opponents. maybe.
I never hear anybody talk about this card. I don't think about or watch. I don't think about Commander all that often. I don't watch Commander play. Haven't even really started playing Commander. I'm just building a couple decks, and then I'm gonna go. But I never hear anybody talk about Arena of the Agents.
Hmm.
Ancients. I'm seeing somebody say here it is overall very, very, very much a meta call. There are some metas full of Sisseys and Jodas, probably even most dragon decks where the card is a house. Even locking their Atraxa sideways makes it a lot easier to attack past her, but there are also metas full of decks not playing to their board at all, or playing lots of tokens, or a tribe that's heavily non-legendary like elves.
Yeah.
Doesn't really care about your arena. But no
So
matter
it might not do a
what,
ton, but
it's gonna always, I feel like, do at least one. It's always gonna lock down at least something for just 3 mana.
yeah. And if nothing else, it'll be fun. It'll be like chaotic and spicy.
This makes me want to buy one. It's only 16 bucks.
That's a good price.
Yeah. I'm into it.
So I'm thinking about that. Um, I mean, a Terravore wouldn't necessarily be horrible in this deck.
It wouldn't be horrible, but it's not gonna.
Right. I'm not building around it, so I don't think there's probably something better I can find. Uh, it's land cards in all graveyard. So depending on what my opponents are doing,
Yeah.
it might get big for 3 mana.
Yeah.
So it's a potential. Um, Vertaloth the Ancient, who's a 6 mana legend, uh, pumps up Saproling tokens, and I have a few Saproling cards in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, green 4/7 with kicker X. Saproling creatures and other tree folk get +1/+1. And if you pay the kicker, you get X/1/1 green Saprolings when you bring it into play. My Namada makes Saprolings. I have one or two other things. Verdant Force. So maybe, but then this is another big creature, so I might be having to take something else out instead of this.
Just last week, you were like, I think I have too many big creatures.
I know. I'm on the fence. That's why this card is not like an
Yeah.
auto include at this point. Not, I'm not shoving it in for sure. Nut Collector is also 6 mana, and
Yeah.
it has some squirrel token synergy. So I could lean one way or the other and go with Vertaloth instead of that, take that out. So that's a potential. Wall of Blossoms I thought about. I thought about Frog Tongue, the enchantment that allows ground blockers to block flying, and it helps you draw a card.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a ton of enchantments in my deck for my weak Enchantress synergy deck.
Yeah.
So something like that could go in. I had looked at Root Maze as well. I don't know if you remember Root Maze.
Does that cause lands to not untap? That sounds like it would be good.
Artifacts and lands come into play tapped. And I have almost no artifacts, and
Yeah.
my lands are all monocolor, so I probably don't care too much about how that would mess you up mana fixing wise.
Yeah. Plus, you have a lot of non-land mana generating
Right.
ability.
So this is kind of like a Winter Orbish effect for me that I can get around. Only 1 mana, so
I like that card.
yeah, you like that one the most so far?
I like
mentioned?
Arena of the Ancients the most so far, but only because it's a Legends card.
Okay.
It's probably not the best, but people won't, it's unexpected. You probably don't see it a lot. I'm still over here glancing at what people are saying about it on the EDH Reddit, and they're, you and I, we're not that in tune with
Yeah.
the
Also, we're working with just
best
old frame here too, so
Yeah.
not as good for them, but maybe better for us.
we're not that in tune with the best commanders these days, but it seems like the general agreement, and this is reflected in the fact that it's only a $16 card, which if it was highly played in Commander and highly desirable, would be way more than that as a Legends card. General consensus seems to be that like many of the best commanders, they don't need to attack or tap. Like they're not in the command zone because people are attacking with them. Or these days commanders have like 17 abilities that just activate from sitting there.
Yeah. Triggered abilities and abilities with costs
Yes.
that don't involve tapping, and yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of where I am. Squirrel Wrangler, another one I thought of in here. A little higher casting cost and mana intensive. You have to sacrifice land to make it work. I don't know how many things I want like that. Um,
From a game, like just straight up, like, what's the best from a gameplay perspective for your deck though? I think probably Root Maze, probably.
okay.
I
I'm
think.
glad you like it because I think,
I
yeah,
think.
for one mana, and it gives me another enchantment in there to help.
Squirrel Wrangler featured on a recent episode of the Old Mage MTG podcast where we talked about pre-modern squirrels.
I don't like that it's 4 mana and I have to sacrifice lands to use its abilities. I
That's
mean, I
rough.
can handle all of that in here, but I'm also counting on that to help me handle some other things. So I don't want to
Yeah.
go, bog myself down too much.
Yeah. If you have other spells in your deck where you need to sacrifice lands, I don't think you worry about the Squirrel Maze. I think you go something. Sorry,
Squirrel Maze.
Squirrel Maze. The Squirrel Wrangler. There should be a Squirrel Maze card.
There should. That'd be great.
I don't. I haven't decided what it's going to be yet, but it sounds
It's
like
like
a
a
good.
bird feeder in the middle of a bunch of obstacles that the squirrels are trying to get to.
That should be a card too. Bird feeder.
Bird feeder. Yeah, yeah.
What was I going to say earlier? Episode 86 of the OMH MTG podcast titled A Pre-Modern Squirrel Practice Spectacular. This is actually the thumbnail art.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when you used that.
You remember that episode we just filmed 7 months ago? 7 weeks ago?
I remember that you used the art for it.
Okay.
What I meant, Steve.
Not 7 months ago. 7 weeks ago.
I was also wondering about fetch lands, like you mentioned. Like, I have a mono green deck here. Do I put fetch lands in it just for like deck thinning?
Here's the other thing. When I mentioned fetch lands, I was like, maybe I also put in a Sylvan Library. And then if I have fetch lands and a thawing glaciers, and I have a couple other things that will cause me to shuffle too, then the Sylvan Library becomes much better.
Yeah.
The more you can shuffle your library, the more you get to look at three new cards. The more frequently you get to look at 3 new cards.
Sylvan Library seems good for your deck.
Do you have a Sylvan in here?
I do, yeah.
So maybe that would be a reason to run fetch lands. That would be one reason to run fetch lands.
Okay.
But I don't know if you should run fetch lands if that's your only reason to run fetch lands.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a good enough effect in a mono green deck.
I don't think so. Yeah. Unless there's other things in here
that benefit from it. Yeah.
That do something positive for you if you shuffle your library. And I'm not seeing a lot of it. I'm not really seeing anything
really. And then, like I have a strip mine, but do I put a wasteland in too?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I don't think I have a strip mine and a wasteland in.
Well, I'm just thinking about the
should.
size of the deck. In a 100-card deck, relying on only one land
Yeah.
removal land, I might want 2 to help. I don't know. It's tough. Mana base is tough trying to figure out.
Especially mono green mana base. It's hard.
Is that sarcasm?
Yes. What are you talking about?
Well, but yeah, I just mean all the little tweaks, like, how many land destruction lands and fetch lands and man lands. And,
Yeah.
and then it gets harder, obviously, for playing in it when you're playing in a multicolor deck.
Not sitting down and putting any thought into it, I'd say yes to a wasteland, no to fetch lands in your deck.
Okay.
I don't know why. That's just what's popping into my head. That's what feels
I'll take
right.
that as initial advice.
That's what feels right.
Yeah, you put the root maze in if you want. Put it in.
Okay.
We'll have 100 cards.
Let's go. Okay, we're both at 100 cards. Look at that. This is about 6 months into the year. That's what I thought it would take us.
We're twice as fast as last year.
I think we started it halfway through last year.
Do the whole year, yeah.
Root Maze from Tempest, I think, originally, right? Doobie-doobie-doo. I was reading a thread on Twitter the other day. Guy from the Howling Salt Mine podcast posted it about audio, and he was like, make sure you get up on that mic. We were talking the other day, Alex. We were trying to figure out if you should sit
I'm not getting up on the mic enough. I need to do a better job.
Damn,
I have to wave my mouse.
Damn, you just sounded really good there, actually.
Yeah? Got better?
Yeah, because the other day
get up on the mic.
The other day, well, that was too much. You clipped a little bit. But the other day I was like, no, you sound fine. But then when you actually just did move closer to the mic there, you sounded much better to me.
Okay.
A fist length away.
Maybe by episode 200 we'll have it nailed down.
A fist length away seems too close, but if I do two fists, if I'm doing like this, if I'm doing this, like that length away.
No.
Just that's how we're gonna start every episode, Alex. I'm gonna make you do
Come
that.
here. My dog's here barking. Sorry.
Dog's here. It's dinner
Dance.
time.
Dance. Come on up here, dancing.
My cat needs
Come,
fed.
dog. Oh, you can't see her. You're not tall enough, dog.
We got other things to do. I think we're done. I think we're done talking about Magic the Gathering for the day. We're done talking about decks from 1997. We're done talking about the Commander decks, which are now built. And at this point, they just need to be refined. We need to do some actual play testing,
Just
Alex.
gonna hone and whittle the Commander decks.
Yeah, our decks aren't necessarily good for playing against one another, I don't think. I think like one of our commenters said earlier in the year, you would stomp my deck. I think that is true. But we should play a little dual commander 2-on-2 where we test.
Yeah, it's not just for head to head either.
Yeah.
You know, like ideally we're going to be playing this in like multiplayer games. So, you know.
Yeah, well, no, what I'm thinking is one of us could net deck a commander deck. And then we could test it. We could test our decks against a bunch of other decks that with the other person net decks. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But we have to find some old frame only commander decks to net deck. No, we could do both. We could find some newer ones too. I wonder how some of these would be nice to see how some of these decks we're building old frame only perform.
We could search for like lower power commander decks or something.
Middling commander decks that include the modern card pool. But anyways, it was a success. Another episode in the books. We made it all the way through. I'm staring out my window. The sunshine's coming through, but I was worried there for a while. Everything was very gray. I was seeing huge bolts of lightning out in the distance. I thought maybe they were coming for me. When we started the episode, there was a moment there, actually before we officially started the episode, where we were glitching out. I was going like this in the camera, and you were going like this. And I thought, oh shit, my internet's going down. We're going to have a huge storm. It's going to take everything out. We're not going to be able to do it, but we did it. And I'm glad we did. We crushed it. It was one of our finest episodes ever, I believe. What do you think, Alex? Rank it at a
top notch.
10.
Top notch.
How much out of 10?
8.8.
Okay, I won't say no to that. That's higher than I was going to go. I was going to say 7.6, but that's good. As long as you didn't say 10. If you said 10, I knew you were going to be, I would know you were lying to me because we're far from 10, but we're trying our best, people. We're getting better. Not every week. I don't want to say we're getting better every week because sometimes I just don't make any changes from week to week, but we're getting better every quarter, every 3-month period. I think we're making improvements to the podcast. I have something that's going to be a game changer in mind that I've been talking about since before we started the podcast, but I'm stupid and I can't figure out how to do it. So it should be very simple. I don't know if it's simple. There's not that many people that actually do this thing that I want to do. There's one big podcast that I listen to that has a really great setup, but I know exactly what software they use to do it to, and I can't use it because it's only for Mac, which is very upsetting to me. And I thought maybe if I just do the podcast long enough, eventually they'll release a PC version too, but it's been over a year now. There's still no PC version. And I don't think it's coming. So I got to figure out another way. I also think I have to transition to OBS in order to make this work very well instead of Zoom. If anybody's listening right now and you're audio AV experts, hit me up. I have some questions. I'm intimidated by OBS for some reason, but everybody uses OBS. And I'm thinking if everybody uses OBS, then I should definitely be capable of using OBS. I've definitely done things in my life that not everybody's capable of doing. And I did it, Alex. I persevered. I made it happen.
Somersault?
I can definitely transition the podcast to OBS. Did you say somersault?
Yeah.
That's funny because I struggle with somersaults right now.
I've never been able to do a cartwheel. I've always wanted to be able to do a cartwheel. Can't do it.
Really? I don't know when the last time I tried to do a cartwheel was. It might have been 20 years ago, but I feel like
ages ago. I gave up. I've never been able to do one.
I feel like I could very easily do a cartwheel right now. It's funny you bring up somersaults because I must not have been talking to you, but it was just a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to somebody and I was talking about how you get to an age where somersaults are all of a sudden like a difficult thing. Not to do necessarily, but to stand up from after you did them. And that happened to me very young age. I get very disoriented. They make me so dizzy.
They call it somersault paralysis.
You used to be able to just do somersaults like across a field, right? Just one after another as a kid. Nothing happens. You just get up at the end, you just start walking in a straight line. If I do one somersault now and try to get up, I'm on the ground. I tip over. I'm disoriented for the next 2 hours. Everything in my brain becomes discombobulated.
Yeah.
It has something to do with my ear, I'm sure. There's a thing in my
Okay.
ear. It gets flipped upside down, turned topsy-turvy. But that's it. That's it for episode 93 of the podcast. Next week, we're coming back with one of two topics. I've decided. I haven't decided on the
Cereal?
exact topic, but it's going to be one of two topics. It's either going to be continuation of the cereal series. I believe I want to talk about tricks next, Alex.
All right.
If it's not tricks, it's going to be the deck that Voodoo lost to in the top two of PT Paris 1997. Designed and piloted by Mike Long, the man who wore a no fear hat and relentlessly harassed his opponents. Talk to you next week.
I ain't gonna do this anymore. That's all from me. Goodbye.